This is a player who a grand jury refused to press forward with criminal charges, with everything lined up, and the national media and the local media and everyone in between breathing down their neck for details. In the eyes of many, the guy's already been suspended, and he's been guilty of nothing to this point. Only accusations. And I'll also say this. The Atlanta Falcons were willing to bring in Deshaun Watson and get rid of Matt Ryan, who's been nothing
poster boy,
but the example of what you want as a franchise guy. They just signed Marcus Mariota, who is the exact replica of the guy off the field. But they were willing to bring in Deshaun Watson. Same goes for New Orleans, Carolina, and Cleveland. So my point is, you got Peter King, who's shouting from the rooftops about how embarrassing it is for Cleveland and how he would be saying this about any organization. We have yet to see anything but Deshaun Watson be able to say that he's not guilty of these accusations based on the criminal nature of what went down. And we still sit around and wait on the civil cases to be resolved.
I think in the long run, even with whatever the worst case scenario is out of the civil suits, and whatever the worst case suspension scenario is out of the civil suits, he's going to wind up like 3 times as bad as Ben Roethlisberger. And Ben Roethlisberger didn't have it so bad. It was relatively quickly forgotten. Ben Roethlisberger won.
What was his suspension? Roethlisberger?
6 games reduced to 4, I believe.
I think that's right.
Right? Maybe he gets 8 games reduced to 6.
And he settled. He settled out of court.
Here's what I don't want. This is my one thing that I do not want to see from the NFL on this. This cannot be a time served scenario. You cannot state that he is guilty of something and he's done something very bad with a lot of women and then come back and say, but he had to sit last year while getting paid full amount, by the way, the entire time. So it's time served. It's one of 2 things. It's either you are saying Deshaun Watson's totally vindicated, which, by the way, the criminal justice system has vindicated him as of right now, that he is right, all these women are wrong, he's telling the truth, they're lying, we believe him, say that, and say no suspension for that reason, or suspend him. Or there's some level of fault here and he gets some sort of suspension. I don't want the cop-out of just trying to sweep this under the rug and say, time served. That's the only thing I don't want to see.
I agree, but I think that they could do that. I think people would be very pissed off at that. The other thing is...
But hang on.
I want Peter King to stay angry then.
Yeah.
Stay angry at the league and risk losing your sources.
Well, Peter King isn't mad at the league. He's mad at the Cleveland Browns for signing him. The league set this up. The league has already, based on their non-action in this, they've already said time served because Deshaun Watson just signed a $230 million fully guaranteed contract where only $1 million of the $230 counts as base salary this year. And the base salary is what he will not be able to earn if he misses games due to suspension. Everything else is in his bank account. So he's already won. The suspension does nothing but punish the Browns. Watson makes out with a boatload of money and it doesn't have to really give up anything. He's giving up a couple $100,000 a game.
Well, that's where you hurt him more. That's what Peter King, I think, would argue. That's what I would argue. The only thing that hurts players, you have 2 ways to hurt them: money and games. And so I would say, well, you're screwing with with the money in the contract. You manipulated the contract. So I'm going to up the games.
Well, they can up the games, but I'm saying
suspension, right?
Time served would be monetarily because he's already served time by not playing games. Right. Because he wasn't going to play in Houston, and Houston couldn't trade him because the league wouldn't act. It wouldn't guarantee that he was going to be suspended or not. So he's already missed games, and financially, you can't do anything to him. There's nothing the league can do now financially.
Here's the sliding scale of NFL justice that we need the answer to, and this is what they'll have to answer at some point on this sliding scale of NFL justice. We know what the standard was for the criminal charges, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. The NFL has used different standards at different times. The Ray Rice standard was one thing, and then there was video, and it was something else, right? The outrage went to a different level. So what's their standard on this case? We have no idea. No idea. They haven't said a word. They haven't given an indication. But, Chad, I think that's the question when it comes to this suspension and discipline.
But here's the thing.
What's their standard?
Here's what their standard. 4 owners have already told us the league standard. There are not going to be criminal charges, so they're willing to give him the best contract in the NFL.
Right.
That's what the 4 owners would have had to do in order to obtain Deshaun Watson. So for the NFL to claim like they haven't decided anything yet, 4 of the bosses of the league just said they were willing to bring this guy on and give him whatever he wanted.
Sure, but Goodell still operates, quote-unquote, separate of that.
Yeah,
and we've seen him do things to owners, to their players, as his own judicial system. It's gotten softer. For a while, it was really
that's
harsh.
when 31 other owners are in agreement with him and the one is pissed, is when he's allowed to do do that. Right.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, and there's a reason he keeps getting
And whose temperature does he
contract.
take? Like, how outraged is the public right now? I don't think very outraged.
Well, but consider this: he's either. So you mentioned who he works for. On one hand, the owner in Houston, the McNairs, are extremely happy with this. They got 3 first-round picks, 2 future second and third-round picks, and they get Deshaun Watson away.
I think they'd like to see him suspended too, don't you?
Well, maybe, but again, it would be hurting the Browns. But at this point, why does Houston care?
They've washed their hands.
And they got paid to get rid of him, like they said they were going to from the jump. They got what they wanted. And then you have Haslam, who is desperate for a franchise quarterback. Same goes for Tepper, that would have done this. We just gave you the example of what Arthur Blank was willing to do with the quarterback he had versus the guy he wanted to obtain. My point is, you've got owners who are happy with this, and I don't see anyone complaining about what went down. So therefore, I don't know what the suspension might end up being.
No, it's not as much about owners as public.
But
really, they have to.
It's not as much about the public as it is the media members.
Yeah.
You've got Peter King.
What are they going to do?
Writing his column based on this, but I don't see.
Where's the rest of it?
Whenever I pull up the headlines, all I see is what Watson does for the outlook of the AFC. No one's pointing back to what happened last summer and fall.
King's been pretty singular.
Today he was.
I haven't read everybody else.
From what I've seen, it's been very singular.
Yeah. No, people get bored with it and they're past it.